Hello, my dear young professors. Didi Jato is my name, your facilitator for economics at Omega Education Consults. You are warmly welcome to this lesson. In our previous lesson, we discussed international trade, and in that particular topic or lesson, we spoke about trade restriction, barriers to international trade, and then we spoke about export and import, and under export and import, we discussed invisible goods and visible goods. Right. So on that note, let's have a quick recap of that lesson. So we are going to display a table and then you respond to the questions based on the table. So we have exports, imports, and then the amount spent on the various items. So compute merchandise exports, merchandise imports, invisible exports, invisible imports. All right, so you have 20 minutes to get this done, and then you send me for marking and feedback. Great work done. So in this lesson, we're going to continue from where we ended the last time, and then talk about terms of trade and balance of trade. All right, so terms of trade simply refers to the rate at which a given country's exports exchange for its imports. That is, how much does a country's export product exchange for the import product? Now, in this regard, we will look at how the prices of export compare with the prices of import of goods and services. And for that matter, it is expressed as a relationship between export prices and import prices of goods and services. So, how much do we sell our products to our trading partners? And then how much do we pay for the imported products into the country? Now, if we do that comparison and we realize that the import prices, if the import prices are higher than export prices, then it means that we are losing because we spend more money to buy items from them, but then when we sell ours, we get less money. So that is a worse situation for any given country. For instance, if we spend $10 importing or buying items from another country, and then we sell our items at $8, then it means that we lose as a country. So that is an unfavorable thing. However, if I have a situation where we spend $10 in buying things into the country, and yet we sell ours at $17, then it means that we get more money when we sell and then we use less money to buy. Right. So let's look at how to compute terms of trade. So the formula for computing terms of trade is this. Right. So as I mentioned, terms of trade can be favorable or unfavorable. If our export prices are higher than the import prices, then our terms of trade is favorable. However, terms of trade becomes unfavorable when the export prices are lower than the import prices, which means that the country loses anytime it trades with its international partners. Now, the formula for terms of trade is this. The index of export prices over the index of import prices times 100. This is what we use in computing terms of trade. So you will be given the index of export prices, index of import prices for various years. and then you state the formula, substitute the figures into the formula, and then get your final answer. If you do the computation and you get a figure which is higher than 100, then it means that the country has favorable terms of trade. If you, however, get a figure that is lower than 100, then the country has unfavorable terms of trade. If you get a figure that is 100, then it means that there is balanced terms of trade, meaning the actual amount of money or the prices at which the country exchanges its product with other countries are the same or equal. Right, so let's look at this table and do some mathematical gymnastics regarding terms of trade. So we have this table, and this table is showing that we have the years and then the index of export prices, then index of import prices for each of the years. And our responsibility is to do the following. One, compute terms of trade for each year. The emphasis is on each year. And then you also comment on the computation. So let's see how it goes. So you state the year for which you are computing the terms of trade. So 2019 terms of trade equals index of export prices over index of import prices times 100. So you have 1 minute to do so. Good job. So let's compare what you did with what we have here. So therefore have the 2019 export prices divided by 2019 import prices, and then we multiply by 100. So when we do that, we're going to get this. Okay, so 150 divided by 110 times 100 is giving us 136.36%. Now the question said, comment on your answer. Commenting on your answer means that you need to say whether it is a favorable terms of trade or unfavorable terms of trade. So in this scenario, the country is having a favorable terms of trade, meaning that its terms of trade, which is 136.36%, showing that there is higher export prices, which is 150 than the import prices, which is 110. So that is how we do the commentary. You must always state the figures involved. So on that note, do that of 2020 and 2021 in 3 minutes. Excellent work done. So once we're able to get that, it means that your understanding of terms of trade is great. Right. So we continue to look at the other aspect of international trade. And in this case, we're looking at balance. So let's see. We mentioned favorable terms of trade, unfavorable terms of trade. Now, for Ghana and most African countries, we are having worsening terms of trade, meaning the prices at which we exchange our products for imported products keeps falling over the years. That's what we call worsening terms of trade. It's a situation where a given country has unfavorable terms of trade, and that unfavorable terms of trade keeps worsening or declining over the years, meaning our export prices keeps falling. That's what we call worsening terms of trade. Now let's look at some of the reasons for which African countries have worsening terms of trade. Why do we always have a situation where the import prices of the commodities that we bring into our countries are higher than our export prices? So one of the reasons is high demand for foreign products. Most African countries are obsessed with foreign products. And because of that, there is always excessive pressure on the foreign products. And that causes their prices to become higher over the years. Right. So that is one of the reasons. Then the other reason is that we always export raw materials. So Ghana, for instance, export cocoa in its raw state, gold in its raw state, bauxite, manganese, crude oil, cotton. All these are exported in their raw state. And every item that is exported in its raw state has a lower price. And then when we export these to the developed countries, they then turn them into other products. And these products are of higher value than their raw materials. And for that matter, they sell them back to us at higher prices. For instance, we sell crude oil, and the crude oil is processed into kerosene, aviation fuel, plastics, gas, petrol, diesel, and so on and so forth. And then they sell these back to us. These products have higher prices than the crude oil that we have sold to them. We also export cocoa beans in their raw state, and then they convert the cocoa beans into chocolate, candies, drinks, pomade, and then sell them back to us at higher prices. And so that causes us to have worsening terms of trade. The other reason for which we have worsening terms of trade is non-diversified economy of most West African states. Now, diversified economy is an economy that has various different products that are produced within the country for export, both manufactured products and then raw products. But in our case, we specialize in the production of raw materials, which is based on absolute cost advantage and then comparative cost advantage. So if you come to various African countries, almost all the things that they export are non-processed products. That is, products in their raw states. Okay, and because of that, we always rely on the international community to bring us products that have been processed to purchase. And for that matter, we always have worsening terms of trade. If we diversify our economy by way of establishing firms to process the raw materials into other products and export, then we say that that will reduce the situation where we'll always have to import from them because we have the industries already that will process those raw materials. So we'll have our own fabric, we'll have our own petrol, diesel, aviation fuel, and so on and so forth. The other reason for worsening terms of trade is inadequate industries to process the raw materials into semi-finished goods or finished goods. So as a country, we import almost everything as a result of the lack of processing industries. We import, previously we had a lot of companies. We had companies like the tire factory, we had a citrus factory, we had a ceramic factory, we had a jute factory, we had a meat factory, we had the glass factory as well. All these the sugar factories, we have two of them, one in Komenda, the other in the Suchari. So all these factories are non-operational. And because of that, we are always compelled to import these materials or these items into the country. So we always experience higher import prices as against lower export prices, right? And then the last but not the least is inadequate intra-African trade, right? We've spoken, there's a lot of noise about free trade area in Africa, African intercontinental free trade. But then that is not yielding much result. And the common reason is that almost all African countries produce similar products. So Ghana wouldn't buy cocoa from Cote d'Ivoire because Cote d'Ivoire also produces, we produce cocoa, Cote d'Ivoire also produces cocoa. So because we produce similar products, we are less inclined to trade among one another. And it is only industrialization that will be able to turn things around. So due to inadequate intra-African trade, we always rely on the other European and the American companies to provide us with our needed materials. And that will always cause the import prices to be higher than the export prices, especially when we always have to use the dollar in the importation of these items. All right. So that said, moving on to another topic we consider to be balance of trade. All right. So balance of trade. Now we have spoken about terms of trade. Now moving on to balance of trade. You need to be very conscious in tracking all these terms so that I don't get confused along the line. Now, balance of trade simply refers to the total monetary value of goods and services that are imported into a given country as compared to the total monetary value of goods and services that are exported out of the country. So that is what we call the balance of trade, establishing the relationship between the monetary value of import products and then the monetary value of export products. Now, you need to take note that balance of trade specifies or concentrates on visible goods, only visible goods. If you talk about balance of trade, we are looking at only the monetary value of visible goods that are exchanged among countries. And because of that, it does not include invisible goods, which we talk about as services. Right. Now, balance of trade may be positive or negative. If balance of trade is positive, it means that the country is having a favorable balance of trade. And a favorable balance of trade is a situation where the total monetary value of exported products is higher than the total monetary value of imported products. That is, we get more money for exporting our visible goods than the amount of money that we spend in importing visible goods. Balance of trade may be negative. If it is negative, then it is unfavorable balance of trade, meaning that the amount of money that we get for exporting our commodities out of the country is lower than the amount of money that we spend in importing goods into the country. So that is what we call negative or unfavorable balance of trade, right? Now, the formula for balance of trade is this. Please never use abbreviation. I am using abbreviation because of want of space. So the formula for balance of trade is visible export minus visible import. That is the monetary value of visible exports minus the monetary value of invisible imports. So once we have established our formula, let's do this computation using this table. Right, so in this table, you should be able to identify all the items here that are only visible. So we have the export products and their corresponding values, and then import product and their corresponding value. So in 1 minute, identify all the visible products by circling them or ticking them. Splendid. Right, so let's do it together. So the visible products, compare what you have with what I have. Crude oil, timber, weapons, gold, cocoa. These are the visible products. So let's check the others and see whether they are invisible. That is one of the ways to confirm whether all the items that we have ticked are visible and nothing has been left out. So the rest are shipping, which is a service. Tourism is a service. Aviation is a service. Consultancy is a service. banking is a service. So we haven't left anything out. Now let's go back to that of imports and then take our visible products. So we have cars, computers, lubricants, equipment, cement, jewelry. So let's go back and then take the other items to be sure that they are invisible. So aviation is a service, shipping is a service, tourism is a service, insurance is a service, right? So all items are ticked, and then we are now sure that we have our visible product clearly identified. Now, from there, we can now do our computation by summing all the values of the visible exports up, and then we sum up the values for the visible import, and then we find a difference. So let's see how it goes. All right, so you do the computation and then you send your answers to me. Bravo. Right, so we're moving on to another concept under international trade, which is balance of payments. Now, we did terms of trade, we have done balance of trade. We are now moving on to balance of payments. There shouldn't be any confusion amongst these three. So balance of payment simply refers to the systematic record that shows the relationship between the total amount of money that a given country receives from other countries as against the total amount of money that country pays to other countries. That is what we call balance of payments. And balance of payment captures all forms of money that gets out of the country and all forms of money that come into the country. And these will include the amount of money used for exporting both visible and invisible goods, the amount of money that are used for importing both visible and invisible goods, and then the amount of money that also gets out of the country for no commodities gotten, and the amount of money that also gets into the country for no commodity given out. So we'll talk about loans as well. We'll talk about gifts. Ghana as a country receives gifts. Ghana also gives gifts to other countries. So we're talking about every amount of money that is paid outside the country and every amount of money that also is paid into the country. That is what establishes the balance of payments. So balance of payment captures everything, all sorts of money, whether for visible, invisible, or for no product gain at all. Right. So that is what we call balance of payment. Now, balance of payment has three main components, or there are three main items on balance of payment. So let's look at them one after the other. So we have the current account section, we have the capital accounts, and then we have the official financing accounts. So we're going to take them one after the other and then discuss each one of them in detail. Right. Now, the formula for balance of payment is this. So balance of payment, BOP, always write in full, is current accounts plus capital accounts plus official financing accounts. That is the formula for computing balance of payments. Now, the table will be giving you, the items will be given, and then your duty is to compute these. Okay, so we look at the details of each of these. So that what we'll be looking at first is the current account. Okay, so current account simply estimates or shows the total inflow and outflow of cash or money for goods and services. That is what we call current account. All the amount of money that gets into the country for goods and services. Okay, and then also the amount of money that we use in paying we used to pay import products and the amount of money that we get from export product. If we put that together, then we'll get a current account. All right. Now, on the current account, we talk about invisible trade account and then visible trade account. Now, invisible trade account simply is the relationship between the amount of money used in buying commodities into the country and then the amount of money used in selling, amount of money gotten for selling commodities, our commodities. Now, take note that this is only about visible products. When we talk about visible trade account, it's the relationship between amount of money we get for exporting visible goods and the amount of money that we pay for importing visible goods. And this is the same as balance of trade. Then we have the invisible trade account, which captures only invisible product, which we call services. So in this case, we are looking at the relationship between the total amount of money that we get for exporting invisible goods and then the amount of money that we pay for importing invisible goods. If we find the difference, then we get the invisible trade account. So we're going to look at each one of them. Visible trade account talks about only visible goods. Invisible trade account talks about only invisible goods. So if you want to find the value for visible trade account balance, then you need to find the total amount of money that we use in purchasing visible goods and then the amount of money that we get for exporting visible goods. If you want to find the balance on invisible goods, then we find the total amount of the difference between the total amount of money that we get for exporting invisible goods and then the total amount of money that we pay for importing invisible goods. These are the various means by which we find the relationship between these, right? Now, the visible goods are mostly easy to identify. The challenge is to how to identify the invisible ones. So we have some examples of them: shipping, insurance, interest, amount of money that will flow into the country based on the interest that the country has gained, or the amount of money that will get out of the country based on companies that are in the country that have made interest. Now, also talk about profits, dividends, money for tourism, government expenses abroad. Government of Ghana has embassies and high commissions abroad. And so those people working in those places, government will have to spend money for their maintenance or pay the workers there and then also pay other items. There are a lot of Ghanaians who are also residing abroad. Government of Ghana pays money to those individuals. We also have state visits. Our presidents also visit other places. Other dignitaries also visit Ghana. We pay money. We also have dignitaries going abroad for health services. We pay for those health services abroad. Now, we also have unrequited transfers. The unrequited transfers are monies that get into the country for no physical item or service given in return. So these are free monies actually. So these are some of the items we consider to be invisible items on the current account. That said, let's look at this table. So on this table, we are going to compute balance on visible trade accounts. And the formula for computing balance on visible trade accounts is the value of exported goods minus the value of imported goods. And because it is visible, we only capture the visible goods. Then the next one is to calculate the balance on invisible trade accounts. Balance on visible trade account is computed by using the formula, the monetary value of invisible exports minus the monetary value of the invisible imports. Then we also compute the balance on current account. And the formula for computing balance on current account is the balance on visible trade plus the balance on invisible trade. Or put it differently, it is the difference between the total monetary value of exported products minus the total monetary value of imported products. So that is how we compute the current account balance. And if you are using the total monetary value, take note that we are talking about only the visible, both visible and invisible goods in this case, right? So let's try and do the computations together. So do I, and let's see what you get. Awesome work done. So we look at the table and then we'll do it together. So we are computing balance of visible trade accounts. Never use abbreviation. I am using abbreviation for want of space. So balance of visible trade accounts is computed by using the formula visible, there is I there. So please take note, there's a typo mistake here. So visible exports minus visible imports. So you identify all the visible imported products minus the value of the visible imported products. So this is how we go about it. So identify them in 1 minute. I've given you one cars. Great work done. So the other items are, we are computing visible export. So the items that we imported, visible export, we are computing visible export. So those items that we exported that are visible. So cars, computers, lubricants, equipment, cement. What are the others? And then the last one is jewelry. So we put all these together. So quickly do the computation. Let's see what you will get. Perfect work done. So this is the answer that we get for the visible export, right? Now, the next one is to compute the visible import. So take note that we said the balance of visible trade accounts has to do with the difference between visible export and visible import. We have calculated the visible export. We now have to calculate the visible import. So I have identified one, identify the rest. Amazing work done. So we have crude oil, then we have timber, we have weapons, we have gold, then the last one is cocoa. Now, take note of the addition sign that has been added. And it is mandatory that you add those addition signs and then put them at the appropriate places. So let's put them together. Let's see what you will get. Wonderful work done. So we now have to find the difference. So balance on visible trade account then becomes the value of visible exports minus the value of visible imports. Then we find a difference. Wonderful work done. So I hope you got that. Okay. So that said, we move on to look at the II. On the same table, II said that calculate balance on invisible trade accounts. So balance on invisible trade account talks about only the invisible goods. So the total monetary value of invisible exports minus the total monetary value of invisible imports. So identify all the invisible items here on both export column and then the import column. Incredible work done. So let's do that together. So we are computing invisible exports. So aviation, shipping, tourism, and then lastly, insurance. So put them together. Let's see what you get. Marvelous work done, right? So this is what you get. Now, this constitutes the total monetary value of invisible exports. Now, moving on to the total monetary value of invisible imports. So I've given you one, identify the rest, and then do the computation. Fantastic work done. So let's compare your answer with what we have here. So we have shipping, tourism, aviation, consultancy, banking. Then we put all of them together. then the final answer is this. So getting 2,485,000, right? So we are now using the formula balance on invisible trade accounts, which is the invisible export minus the invisible imports. So we find a difference. So we're going to get 2,682,000 minus 2,485,000, and that will give us $197,000. So this is what we do to get our balance on invisible trade accounts. Very easy, isn't it? Right. So move on then to calculate the third item on the question, right? And that is the balance on current accounts. So the formula for balance on current accounts we mentioned as the balance of visible trade, and then the plus the balance on invisible trade. That is the formula. So the total monetary value for visible trade, balance of visible trade. So we mentioned that balance of visible trade simply is the difference between visible export and visible import. Then the balance on invisible trade is the difference between invisible export and invisible import. We found these items. So once we find these items, then we put them together. Once we put them together, then we get the balance on current accounts. So that gives us this amount of money. Now, the other way to also find balance on current account is to find the total monetary value of exported products, okay, and then subtracting it from the total monetary value of imported products. That is another way you can get your balance on current accounts. Taking note that balance on current account captures both visible and invisible goods, as against balance of trade that captures only visible goods. Right. So that is it for the balance on current accounts. I hope you understood it. You have to go over again and then do the computations on your own. Right. So on that note, I say a big thank you for staying through and participating in this lesson. In our next lesson, we'll be talking about capital accounts and official financing as the two other components of balance of payments. Until then, bye-bye from now.